Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fearlessly Authentic. I'm your host, Jodi Harrison, and I'm so excited to share today's guest with you. If you're new to the show, this is the show that educates you, empowers you, and inspires you to live your most fearlessly authentic life. Because, in my humble opinion, what the heck are we doing here if we're not doing that or trying to do that every single day? My guest today is someone whose voice has brought clarity and healing to thousands navigating the painful aftermath of narcissistic abuse. Brandon Ord, also known as Clear Minds with Brandon, is a powerful content creator and coach whose message is all about helping people break free from toxic cycles, rebuild their sense of self, and find peace after emotional trauma. Brandon's honest, direct approach has made him a go-to for understanding narcissism, the trauma bond, manipulation tactics, and most importantly, how to finally walk away and stay free. In today's episode, we'll talk about how to identify covert and overt narcissists, the guilt that often follows leaving one, the manipulation strategies they use, like feigning illness, and how to tell when you're actually in a safe, healthy relationship. This conversation is raw, real, and empowering. Whether you're trying to leave a toxic relationship, heal from one, or just understand it better, Brandon brings the insight you need. Let's dive in. Welcome to the show, Brandon. One of the things that I noticed about your Instagram, which is how I found you and how your content really resonated with me because of what I was going through and what I am going through. And I noticed that you didn't talk. You point and you give such great information. And I was wondering what led you to start talking about narcissism?
Okay, yeah. So one of the things, if you see my Instagram, there's a lot about narcissism. There's also things about other things as well. I think one of the things about narcissism, it's a very topical subject right now. So it's a lot of people know me for the narcissism reels and videos and different things like that. But I've sort of covered a lot of things to do with mental health, abuse, narcissism, and all sorts of different forms of healing and self-growth for quite a while as part of what I do in my company. I think the main thing is that the main videos that got a lot of traction were narcissism. So I've got, I've worked a lot with different people in what I do, and a lot of people seem to struggle from past relationships, whether it be parents, lovers, friends, bosses, and different things, that different people that have narcissistic traits. So I think that one of the things that I kept getting asked was generally related to narcissism. So I decided to start making content, and people really loved it from there. Basically, they, both in English and in Spanish, they really started to enjoy the content, and I found a lot of fulfillment from helping people. I get a lot of people messaging me, and I found that it's become something that I really enjoy. When I started my Instagram, it was always just something about putting myself in front of the camera, because I've always been, when it comes to my company, like my name on Instagram is Brandon Clear Minds, because my company is Clear Minds, but it was the first time in 4 years I decided to put myself out. I've always been behind the computer, behind the cameras, behind different, obviously, like the plan of the company and different things. And for the first time, I decided that in 2025, I was going to really put myself out as the sort of founder and face of the brand. And I decided, obviously, I have a co-partner as well in the company, and we both decided we're going to be sort of like live with the brand and go on camera for the first time. And one of the things that really resonated with me was obviously helping people that often feel like out of control, or like they don't have control, helping the people that need it most, basically. I think that's the thing that sort of resonates with me the most.
So you started Clear Minds how many years ago? And the purpose of the company was to help people dealing with mental health issues?
Yeah, so I started Clear Minds in 2021. It was actually, we were building it at the end of 2020, and we launched it in January 2021. And Clear Minds is all around hypnotherapy. So it's all around, obviously, mindset and improving, obviously, all different parts of your being. But we started Clear Minds to help people mainly with addiction. That was the initial thing. My co-partner, he struggled with addiction. He's a close friend of mine. There's me and him founded the company, and I got a lot of help from my wife as well. She's like basically like a third founder, but basically we found it mainly around addiction. I also have family members. My sister, she had problems with addiction. That's something they both had in common, and we basically just initially we wanted to help them, so they found hypnotherapy very helpful, and we sort of realized that this is a tool that a lot of people can use, and we decided to package that into something that other people could use, and we launched it in 2021, and it was a very small website, singular thing, like this is a package, you can do it. And we were really naive and just thought, okay, let's put this together, and loads of people bought it. And then we got a lot of people. They were messaging us, asking us for more sessions, different things, and it sort of snowballed from there, where it became from like a website with a singular package to us basically now having like multiple therapists working full time for us, making sessions in 5 languages. A whole team. It started off with me doing the customer service. Me and my wife were doing the customer service all the time, and now we've got obviously a team of people that do customer service 24/7. And yeah, it's sort of grown from there.
How would you explain hypnotherapy?
Yeah, hypnotherapy. So hypnotherapy, I mean, to people, I think these days a lot more people know about it. I think even just when we started, it seemed a little bit voodoo, and people thought that hypnotherapy was like a thing you do on stage where you make people do crazy things and stuff like that. But hypnotherapy, I think the best way to think about it is it's very much like meditation. And I think I'm sure your audience, everyone sort of knows what meditation is. I'd say it's like a little step above meditation. It's a little bit more like when you use hypnotherapy properly, whether it be in person or self-hypnosis, you feel like you're in like a sort of trance-like state when you use it. And like, I've got a hypnotherapy company. I was a skeptic before I used it. It was a really weird time. I used it during COVID for the first ever time. So this all came about very quickly at the time. I would have been the sort of person that said hypnotherapy wouldn't work, and I'd fight it. It wouldn't work for me, but it did, and I was like quite baffled by how effective it was. But hypnotherapy is like a meditation. Apart from the therapist, they talk you down, so they get you in a really relaxed state. You relax your whole body. And then they basically open up to speak to your subconscious mind. So it'll feel like you're sleeping. And obviously your subconscious mind processes so much more than your conscious mind. When your conscious mind's processing one thing, your subconscious mind's processing sometimes millions of things all at once. So your subconscious mind's a really powerful thing to sort of take control of and adapt and improve, because your subconscious mind makes most of the decisions for you.
That makes a lot of sense. It sounds like just a deeper state of meditation where you could definitely wake up some things that are in your subconscious that you can start dealing with head on. Because I'm not a therapist or a hypnotherapist, but I know that many times we hide things deep down. We keep shoving them down and shoving them down, and we just don't want them to come to the surface. And I feel like with hypnotherapy, that's what it does.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that's definitely where it does. And there's different types. There's things that are regression, where you can go back into problems that bothered you in your childhood. There's a lot of hypnotherapy around mental health and improving your mental well-being. But there's also a lot of things with hypnotherapy to do with habits and mindset. So obviously you're in the fitness industry. And you've done so much with fitness, and I think one of our big parts of Clear Minds is the fitness, like the health, the motivation to exercise. That get up and go. Because I mean, right. I think that first step, that's one thing that a lot of people struggle with, and also all sorts of different mindset around diet as well. I think a lot of people struggle with diet. We actually have a lot of things around diet, and people really jump on it, whether it be sugar addiction. It's a comfort is food, and that's my biggest struggle with the gym, is always my diet. I can train 100%, but my diet is the bit that lets me down and keeps me stuck. But yeah.
Right. And what I deal with as a coach is helping people manage their mindset around food because, as you said, you can go to the gym every day. That's easy. Boom, boom, boom. Sure, give me a
Yep.
workout, I'll do it. But then it's like, how do I manage my mindset around the food that I need to eat in order to support the workouts I'm doing? And I know a lot of people who have dealt with addictions to alcohol and drugs, and now they're quote unquote addicted to different foods, sugary foods. So it's very emotional. We all need to manage the way we look at food, and it's not so easy. It's the most difficult job I have when I'm coaching a woman.
Yeah, I think so. I think it definitely is, and that's something that hypnotherapy can help with. Obviously, it's never going. It's something that coaches can help their clients with. It's never going to be as good as like the kick up the ass you get from the coach, but it is going to help you sort of change your mindset and your relationship with food. So seeing it as a reward. So the reward is this food that is sort of unhealthy and doesn't meet my goal, like doesn't help me meet my goal. Whereas this food is obviously healthy, it sustains my body, it's in line with my goals, and that's the sort of thing that your subconscious mind can take control of, and that's where hypnotherapy can help.
With working out, with being fit and healthy, one of the things that happens with many people it was always my safe space to be in. That was my form of meditation. And I don't think it's talked about enough. It's talked about a little bit. But as I was talking to myself yesterday, I said, I need to talk more about the mental well being you get from being fit and healthy. Even though people do know that, but I've been working out for 44 years, and I know that the reason I keep going back to it and never stopped is because it's my form of meditation.
Yeah, it's something that really makes you feel good, and I think I see that amongst friends, people I've worked with, people I've coached, different people. When it comes to fitness, the people that enjoy it and obviously they really use it as their sort of place, their go-to place, and I think a lot of people, like there was one person I was working with, and he had a lot of problems. He lost his mother at a young age, and he obviously then just had a father figure, and he just turned fully to the gym, and like he's in immense shape because for him the gym is totally just his therapy, and I think that can be something quite common. Is like it's to some people the gym's the therapy.
So, if you don't mind, I'd like to really focus in a little bit more about narcissism because it is a very hot topic.
Yeah.
And the thing that drew me into you was, as I said at the beginning of the show, the tips that you were giving, but you were talking about the mother wounds, how to leave a narcissistic relationship. Can you explain to the audience what narcissism is?
Yeah, of course. So I think narcissism is something that people are becoming much more aware of. I think before, narcissism was thrown around a lot as a sort of a term for someone basically being a bit of an asshole. I think like that was one of the things, was it was someone that was, people using it a lot more. Whereas generally a narcissist, so narcissists generally are sort of made, not born. So I don't think it's something that's hereditary necessarily. It's not something where they're born a narcissist. It's something where something's happened in their life and they become a narcissist, whether it be at a young age, which is very common. So that's usually through like a father wound or a mother wound or some sort of issue, like a childhood problem that's caused them to be that way, which we can obviously go more into. But generally, deep down, what a narcissist is they're someone that has low self-worth and they overcompensate. They have ego problems that are generally related to, obviously, issues, again, from their childhood. So often when they were a child, they maybe didn't feel loved, didn't feel valued by their mother or father, which can have all different complications, different things. But generally, it gives them a low self-worth, and then they overcompensate that later. And then at the same time, they need validation. And often the validation comes in forms of abusing spouses, especially when they don't give the validation that they need. So a narcissist, in short, if I had to put it into like a short term, is someone that basically has low self-esteem, but they'll never admit it. They'll generally come across very overconfident, very confident, very they'll want to look good. They'll want other people to think they look good and things like that. They'll have a big egotistical problem. You can't criticize them because they won't want to be wrong. That'll definitely trigger them. And generally, there'll be someone that lacks empathy. If they do have empathy, it'll probably be quite false. It'll be forced empathy, because one of the things as well, I mean, obviously narcissists are bad and it's a terrible thing and it's a horrible behavior, but generally people that are narcissistic are usually also, on the other side, quite intelligent people. They're often successful people. They get what they want, especially in the workplace. They're often the higher up people. They're not, they're not the people usually at the lower end of the food chain, because their ego won't let them do that. So they'll often be people, higher up and intelligent. They'll plan stuff. They won't do stuff with the same emotion that like you and I might do, where you'll sort of, they won't wear their heart on their sleeve. They'll be calculated, they'll manipulate, they'll get what they want, and they'll remember every single thing, and they'll have a plan in place, and usually they'll sort of, one way or another, they'll make sure they get it. And when you try to take them off their course, where they want to go, like away from their plan, obviously that's when they'll have a tantrum, and that's when the problems happen, because you're not doing things in line with what they want. So whether it be good or bad, and obviously people have different thresholds for what that might be. That might be as little as, you putting the food away from a shop. You go to the supermarket, you put some food away, and you're putting it in the wrong place, or you're leaving it too long before you put it in the fridge. That might trigger someone, because that's not how they do it. So all of a sudden they're going to go crazy and stuff, because you're not doing what they want them to do. Or on the other spectrum of things, they could be, way more, not as intense with things like that. It might be more egotistical to do with how you are in public. It might not, in the home they might be quite relaxed, might be quite normal with things, but then when you're in public, they want you to behave in a certain way. They want you to show that, basically show them in a good light. That's something that they'll do. So, I mean, there's loads of different things that could go on for ages, but yeah, I'd say that's more or less it.
Okay, good to know. Yes, because I think, as you said at the beginning, the label most people give them is just asshole, but there's so much more to that, because I feel like the biggest characteristic of a narcissist is a lack of empathy. That's what I've noticed.
Yeah, I'd say the lack of empathy is one of the biggest things, and obviously empathy can be faked as well. Like usually, I think you'll find that empathy will be something that they'll never actually feel. They'll never feel it, but they might pretend to show empathy. So the sort of false, oh, that must have been so hard for you, that sort of thing. Like they know what to say. They're not stupid. They know what to say.
They know what to say.
To an outsider, to show empathy, but to someone that's obviously truly connected, and someone that's obviously almost their victim, the empathy is not there.
I've read about covert narcissism and overt, which I think many of us, when we think about a narcissistic person, we usually think of the really gregarious, charismatic, well-groomed, good-looking, can charm the pants off of anyone, versus the guy that flies under the radar, who's also charming, usually very intelligent, and it makes it look like their victim is the narcissist.
Yeah, so that's a common thing, and I get a lot of people message me, and they think that potentially they're the narcissist, and that's actually really common. So, and that's obviously, that's another form of manipulation, and them sort of reflecting their basically bad behavior. So what will happen is like you said, a covert narcissist will go more under the radar, rather than being the stereotypical aggressive and everything you could imagine, like really abusive. It'll be all more backhanded, all more sort of under the radar, small digs, doing things behind your back. Often you'll find a lot of covert narcissists also, they cheat in relationships as well and lie a lot. That's what happens with those. And I think a lot of people, when it comes to covert narcissists as well, is they will always like flip it round in an argument. So if there's an argument, they will flip it from you've got a problem to now I'm the victim of your problem, and then obviously flip it round on you. And then at the same time, obviously, there's all different things, like I'm sure obviously you know about in your audience, like gaslighting and things where they'll, like, make you feel a little bit insane, make you think that you'll question your own sanity. They'll tell you things are different, things that didn't happen, and think, this didn't happen, this didn't this. I never said that, I never said this. All those sort of things, and then at the end of it, you'll know that you're a victim of a narcissist like that, because the main thing is you'll feel confused. You'll feel confused and you'll feel like you should be recording what's going on, all that sort of thing.
And I just wanted to make that clear to everyone listening that there is a difference. And I don't think, you mentioned all the characteristics, but it's not just one thing. And I've also read that as human beings, we all have some narcissistic characteristics, but is that the way we lean forward into life, right?
I think, yeah, it's true. Everyone on a bad day is going to have something that someone could call narcissistic. I think that's one of the things. I think there's a difference between someone being an actual narcissist and someone having a bad day. There's always going to be, narcissistic. One narcissistic trait, for example, could be jealousy, but it can also be, as much as jealousy might be unattractive and not nice, a small amount of jealousy can also be healthy. If you're not jealous, you don't care. A small amount, like a very small amount.
Right. Right.
But at the same time, someone could look at that and say that's narcissistic. I think that anyone could have a bad day at the same time. Anyone can have an argument, can, say something they don't mean, or something like that. The difference between a narcissist and someone else is when someone else knows they're wrong, when they know they're in the wrong, they have the empathy, they realize they did wrong, and then they'll try to fix the situation. Whereas a narcissist, their ego, they wouldn't do that. They would either change it, make it that, that's not what happened, you're blowing out of proportion, things like that, or they would blame it on you. So they would turn the blame around onto you anyway, so it wouldn't be their fault.
Right. And I've experienced all that. Can you explain gaslighting and other manipulations somebody with this type of personality would do so everyone listening can recognize those things? So
gaslighting, that's a term that people are using a lot now. I think, again, a few years ago, people didn't really know the terminology as well as they do now, which is great. I think the best way to explain gaslighting is that it's when someone makes you, basically they're trying to augment the reality of what you think. So an example would be something happened, you had an argument, all the way through your argument, this is what was happening, this is what was happening, they said this, especially you've got them dead to rights, this is what happened, maybe you recorded it, whatever might happen, and then they'll say, that never happened. That's not something that happened. I never said that. That's like a very typical like gaslighting thing. And then obviously if you recorded it, and then here it is, here's the proof, you're dead to rights, and then I didn't.
That makes them very angry. The recordings, that makes them very angry.
Well, it's going to trigger it because obviously it's showing them that you've got the proof. But the usual then, what they'll usually say at that point when you show them proof would be, I didn't mean it like that, because they know you've got it recorded, so they know it's there. But then, no, I didn't mean it like that. I meant it like this. And now they're still gaslighting because they're trying to change what your perception of it was. So, generally, if I had to describe gaslighting, it is saying things that aren't true, making you confused about the situation, and generally changing what reality is for you. So if something happened, they'll make it that it suited them more. So if they did something wrong, they will lie about it. They will change the situation to suit them more. So gaslighting generally is it's almost a form of lying, but it's in a way that it will drive you mad. It will, like, some people get ill from it. I mean, when someone's gaslighting, you can sort of feel it in your nervous system. You'll feel like sick, but like in the middle of your chest, because it's not true. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, you eventually, because it will be persistent, you will eventually start to question your own reality of what happened.
Yes.
And then you start to think, well, is that what happened? Maybe I'm wrong. And then that's when you know you've been gaslighted.
Okay, thank you for explaining that. What about feigning illness when they know you're leaving them? And I have experienced this firsthand, which is what I left because I had experienced it for a year.
Hmm.
And I thought he was telling the truth. Yet
Okay.
every doctor he went to said there was nothing wrong with him. And then when he realized that I was onto it, he feigned another illness.
Illness. Okay.
So what's that all about? If you could explain that. That I've never experienced that.
I mean, I think it's obviously manipulation. You know, it's a form of manipulation that comes from a deep sense of fear of abandonment. You know, that's where that will come from. And what I'd say they're doing there is you had an exit plan. You wanted to leave. They would have a fear of abandonment. They won't want you to leave. They also won't want to lose the power they have over you, which some people call narcissistic supply and things like that. They won't want to lose you, especially not on your terms rather than them. So you had a plan to leave. Basically, they used manipulation and they weaponized your empathy. So obviously, a normal person will feel, you know, I couldn't leave them now. Now's not a good time, and that's a healthy
Right.
response. It's not right. You know, that's above your pay grade. You didn't need to. You're not responsible for them. That's their responsibility. But I can imagine, obviously, if someone was genuinely really ill, you'd feel like it's not going to be the right thing to do at that time. You might feel, obviously, make you feel guilty, which is basically just them manipulating you and weaponizing your own empathy to get what they want, which is for you to stay with them and stay in the control.
Hard to recognize because if you are, I feel that, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that they prey on very empathetic people. That's their supply.
Yeah, I'd say a lot of the time they prey on empathetic people that have a lot of empathy. Also, I mean, they prey on all different people because like, I've done a lot of research, and I think a lot of the time they'll prey on people that are, you know, super high value. You know, will make them look great. You know, highly attractive or great job or something like that. So it makes them look good. That's one thing. Which obviously, you know, they might not be empathetic at that stage, but that's that person. They'll also prey on more wounded and also empathetic people as well. So people that, you know, maybe have different, I don't want to say not issues, but they might have problems from their childhood or from other relationships in the past that make
Right.
them vulnerable to them, and
Right.
they'll sense it pretty quickly. And then once they've sensed that, they can obviously then take all that information in, process what the vulnerability is, and then obviously they can execute on getting what they want from the relationship. And I think a lot of the people that become victims of narcissists are often very empathetic because it makes for easy targets, because empathetic people are always going to feel guilty. And like you said about, I'm assuming, I don't know, but obviously feeling the whole manipulation around the illness would have been to make you feel guilty, to make you stay.
Right. Right, definitely. You also talk about healing from a narcissistic mother. I think you talk more about men. It seems to be more focused about a narcissistic mother than a narcissistic father. And with narcissism, is it equal men and women?
I wouldn't say so. Like, obviously, I mean, you know what it's like online when you put man or woman or you target, you know, you focus on one, you'll always get bashed by the other side saying you've focused more on women, you focus more on men and different things. But what I would say is generally from what I've found, and definitely from my messages and things like that, that it's mainly, I'd say it's like 80% men that seem to be narcissists. That doesn't mean it can't be women. There's women narcissists, there's male narcissists, but I definitely think it's mainly male narcissists. And to be honest, I think it's only going to get worse in the coming years with like the generational move and the way social media has taken attention. And I mean, I can go into that another time, but I think, yeah, it's generally more men that I'd say are narcissists than women, generally.
So that leads to sort of the mother wound, right?
Yeah, the mother wound. It can be it can be the mother wound, it can be the father wound, but generally it's the mother wound. Yeah, definitely
Can you
more
explain
around.
that? Why maybe a young man, and as he gets older, becomes narcissistic because of the mother wounds he was traumatized by as a young boy?
Generally, the mother wound is obviously when you've got a little boy, he's basically doesn't get the love or the attention that he wants, or he doesn't feel validated as a child. So that might be with, for example, he only gets rewarded when he does well, or he gets ignored a lot around the house. They're basically, it's an unmet need for his mother's love that he doesn't get, and that might be because she's distracted. It might not be the mother's fault. So a lot of the time people think, oh, it's a bad mother. No, it might not be a mother's fault. The mother might be busy at work. She might have 4 kids, and it might be that that's the oldest one, and sort of fends a bit more for itself than the young ones, or something like that. It doesn't mean it's a bad thing, but it's generally an unmet need from the mother that causes the mother wound. And it obviously makes them think, well, if my mother doesn't love me the way I feel she should, because it's all about how they feel they should love, because I'm sure they do love them, they will then project that as they get older. So they will feel obviously unworthy, which then makes them want to seek validation elsewhere. So they want to seek validation by becoming the boss, or becoming more powerful, more, nice cars, nice things, things that bring them validation. I mean, they'll also then want from a partner what they didn't get from the mother, which is obviously crazy that it works like that, but obviously they're going to seek the validation from the partner. They're going to want that validation from the partner that didn't get from the mother. And when the partner might not give them it, it's going to make them angry. A lot of this sounds like anger, and I think a lot of it's actually, like, when it comes to the man, when men are sad, they'll often show it in an angry way. Sometimes, I think it's almost yin and yang. Sometimes with men and women, sometimes, like, for example, when a woman's angry, sometimes she might show it in a sad way. But when a man's sad, they'll show it in an angry way. And that comes from, like, often from being a young boy. They get to a certain age where their mum tells them not to cry, not to do this. They'll discipline them in a certain way, maybe a different way to they would a daughter, because, all dynamics of boys and girls and different things. And that will cause them to suppress their emotions, which will basically treat them to think, okay, I feel terrible, and they'll mechanically shut off the need for love. So then they'll focus on other things, and that'll be part of what gives them a mother wound. And then when they're an adult, they will seek validation from different things, and obviously one of those things is naturally going to be from their woman. So they're going to get a woman. They're going to want the validation they didn't get from their mother. And this also works in another way as well. Sorry, because I'm sort of going on the lack of emotion. It can also be the mother gives them too much emotion, too much praise, always like the absolute golden child. It can go the other way as well. So I'm sort of saying it on that side, but it can go the other way. There's, we could go on forever, but it could also go that way, and then they want the respect. And then when they're in the adult relationship, they want the respect the mother gave them. They expect it all as well. They expect the same respect.
That makes a lot of sense. So how does one recognize that they are in a relationship with a narcissistic person, and how do they leave safely?
I think, firstly, they'll probably, if they're in a narcissistic relationship and they don't know, obviously the first things that they need to understand is that these are the natural feelings. So they'll always think it's going to get better, or not always, but they need to understand that it's not different. So I think a lot of people, I get a lot of messages and different people messaging me, and they'll say, oh, but there's been a lot of stress, there's been this happened, but obviously in a healthy relationship that shouldn't affect the way they treat you all the time. And I think to understand if you're in a narcissistic relationship, the first thing you need to look at is the way they treat you on an ongoing basis. So if you feel like you argue a lot and it's down to things like we mentioned before, like gaslighting, there's generally like a toxic cycle of control. So it usually starts with love bombing, then they'll devalue you, and then eventually they'll discard you if you're not at the value they need. So generally in a narcissistic relationship, they will love bomb you to start with. So they'll look amazing, they'll share a lot of information with you, they'll make you feel super special, they'll take you here, take you there, they'll introduce you to the parents really soon, they'll introduce you to the friends, they'll become best friends with your best friends, they'll mimic a lot of your behaviors, they'll have all the same interests of you, and generally the person will feel like, wow, this is my person. And then what will happen is they'll obviously things will start to slip, and as they start to gain more control, because you start to become closer as a couple, what will happen is they'll start to slip in the way they really are. So the love bombing might only last a short period of time, and then they'll start to want to break you down. So they'll often do that by, it's generally a play on your self-esteem. That's one of the most common things. So bringing you down, devaluing you, basically, that's part of the cycle. So eventually you feel like you need the person, so you need them, and you also need to almost be on eggshells to behave how they want you to behave. And also it will be a case of they'll also make you feel like it's going to be better when, it's going to be better then, it's going to be better then, and they'll sort of trigger a lot of trauma responses in you. So they'll make you feel like you're not good enough, and then they'll make you feel like you've got to please them, you've got to be doing this, you've got to be doing that. It won't be just a healthy flow, and it won't feel healthy. And then if you were to question it and you were to talk about it and bring it up with them, this is when the gaslighting will set in, when there'll always be an excuse. You'll find that if you bring up that problem with them, the problem will end up being somehow related to you, and you'll feel upset, sad. This is where a lot of people that I speak to talk about the nervous system, where they just, they're not necessarily ill, and some people do get ill. Some people physically get ill from it, but they feel it just here. They just feel like a gut clenching, sort of like they've had the air sucked out of them a little bit.
Yeah, it's an awful feeling. I couldn't eat, and
Yeah.
I could always eat. And I couldn't eat. And when I finally left, I weighed less than 100 pounds, which,
Not a lot.
I looked ill. I looked ill because I wasn't right in the head. And it's hard to recognize, because you can say, as I mentioned before, and you mentioned, that everybody has some narcissistic qualities that come up, like as you said, when they're in a bad mood. But if it's constant or consistent, then it's time to open up your eyes and really get a handle on what's going on. And if they're a great manipulator, you will think you're going crazy first, and you may think that maybe I'm the narcissist. Maybe I'm the one who's wrong. Well, I'm going to do everything I can do to make this relationship better. So
Yeah.
that's, it's a very confusing and heart-wrenching time. And you want that person that you first met at the beginning. Where's that person? Where did he go?
Yeah, well, that's obviously because they're the perfect person from the love bombing at the beginning, and then obviously along the way, whenever you get ready to leave, obviously that person does come back, and it gives you the hope. So you think,
Right.
hang on a minute, okay, this is what I want, and then before you know it, it goes back down that cycle, and then you're ready to leave again, and then that person comes back, and then obviously because you've been at almost a euphoric state through those times of the good times, you can justify the bad behavior, and then you're justifying
Yes.
bad behavior because there's always a problem, and obviously it's not right. And I think that's the time. This is the time when you need to have close friends as well, close friends and family, because they will just tell you how it is. If you have someone close that you can open up to fully, and you can tell them and talk to them, I mean, that's the first step that you need to do, is seek the support, so that then you can say to them, everyone's got, or you'd hope a lot of people have got close friends, and often narcissists will isolate you from your close friends because they know that sort of thing will happen. So that's one thing you've got to watch. They'll turn you against your friends, so you don't spend time with them, which is another form of control. But you need close friends that you can speak to, you can explain what's happening, and that's usually a good motivator to be able to leave and to start the process of like, actually, I'm going to leave. And I think that's the first step, is seeking support from friends, which will also validate your thoughts as well, because all of a sudden you're not crazy, you're in an abusive relationship.
That's exactly what it is. So how does one out there in the world of dating, somebody has, let's just use me, I've been in narcissistic relationships. You're going out there and you're dating. How do you recognize a narcissistic personality? I'm not saying I'm dating, but I'm saying eventually I will be, because I'm not ready for anything like that right now. But how do you recognize it?
That's a tough one. I mean, there's a lot of content out there I've created content. There's other people, great people who create content as well. And I think some of the key things that people say, obviously when dating, is to understand the love bombing. Some of the key things. So if you're dating someone, you're not going to know them all that deeply, but they will often they'll come on strong. They'll share personal information to make you feel like you're in their inner circle. It's generally things that don't feel healthy and normal. So, they'll want to shower you, either give you gifts or, take you somewhere nice, take you on holiday really quickly. Things like this. They will, oversharing information is popular one. So they'll really get that emotional attachment to you. So you feel like they've shared something so personal with me. And then often that's then a prompt for you to share something personal with them, which they can either obviously use as a way of like connecting more, and then potentially even weaponize against you, because they'll sort of understand that. I think there's a lot of different things. I think you've got to look out for. I mean, in the dating stage, it's always going to be love bombing. They'll also they'll overshare about their ex as well, who will probably be known as crazy or something like that, because they've discarded them at that point. So they're at that stage of they've discarded them. They're no good for them anymore. And all of a sudden they'll tell you all these stories about them and how crazy they were and different things, which is devaluing them further. And then at the same time, obviously, probably talking about situations that have occurred based on them probably gaslighting and being unfaithful, or all different things. They'll also often, one of the things that's quite common, and I've seen this, is they'll mirror different behaviors of you. So, like, for example, you might find this an example, but you're obviously massively into fitness. There might be a guy that clearly isn't into fitness, and they're not, but all of a sudden their life's fitness. And that it's not an unhealthy thing. If that also might be a thing that they think, I've always wanted to get healthy. I wouldn't say that that's it, and I wouldn't focus on that, because that might be totally just, everyone wants to do the gym, and that might be their source of motivation. But that's just an example. It might be that you're into something else, horses. All of a sudden, interest in horses, or a lot of things like that. So that's some ways, I'd say.
Those are good things to look out for. I think everybody needs, even in a friendship, you need to look out for those things. It's not just romantic relationships, even though it seems more prevalent that way.
Yeah, I'd say, I mean, obviously romantic relationships are way more intimate, eventually living together and things like that. So that's why it's more prevalent. But yeah, definitely. I think a lot of people have narcissistic friends, bosses, different things.
Right.
And generally distancing yourself from that type of person. It's a general rule of thumb. If someone doesn't make you feel good, have less contact with them. And if you can, have no contact. Sometimes it's family members, or, again, back to relationships. It can be co-parenting with a narcissist. So you've got a child with them. So you're never going to have no contact whatsoever. But you can limit the amount of contact to make yourself feel better.
How does one heal after a narcissistic relationship? They've left, Now they're trying to heal.
So the first thing I'd say when healing from a narcissistic relationship would be to focus on yourself, because coming out of a narcissistic relationship, you're going to have, I'm assuming people would have a very low self-worth. They would have a lot of different trauma responses to the abuse they've suffered. So they will feel very low at that point. So the best way to heal would be to, firstly, obviously you've cut off contact, and make sure there's no more contact if possible. Obviously, like I said, if you're co-parenting, it's a bit different. You're going to have to just be the minimal. But if you're not fully cut off contacts, they will come back. You will get a text, thinking about you, something like this, and try to drag you back in, or just ruin your day, or whatever it might be. But I think the first thing is you've got to learn to accept that it wasn't your fault. So you fully accept that it wasn't your fault. You also, I think a lot of people often end up getting dragged back, and especially with mobile phones and things, they get dragged back into speaking and different things because they want closure. And realistically, it was a state of chaos. So there's not going to be closure, and accept that there might not be closure. So basically draw a line in the sand and move on, and focus on yourself, because it obviously wasn't your fault. and now you just need to set boundaries and rebuild yourself. So, I'm sure like one of the best ways you can do it is obviously like go to the gym. I mean, it's not for everybody, but for most people, you're going to feel pretty good. Work on yourself, spend time with friends, spend time with family. Be aware that the narcissist is probably going to find a new boyfriend or girlfriend
Quickly.
quickly. Yeah. And they're going to show them off, and they're going to show them to, mutual friends, different things, and say bad things about you. But keep that to one side and focus on yourself and your own sort of journey. And I think the best way to do that, and not for the aesthetics, is through like what you do is with fitness. I think that's the first step that anyone could do is whether that can be, you can be any fitness level. That can be saying I'm going to do 5-kilometer walk a day. Just I'm going to get out and do a walk. You'll feel good, and that's the first step, I'd say, is just work on yourself. Get get a good support group of close friends that you feel, safe with, that validate you, that you can spend time with, and keep all contact, totally no contact with the narcissist if possible.
The no contact is got to be hard. I know it was hard for me, but all I knew, and I'm glad you brought up the word chaos, is that after I left, I just needed to breathe, walk, and find peace within myself, because it's a chaos that I've never felt in my entire life. I mean, I have felt it from another relationship, but being older, thinking you're wiser, thinking that this is it, like you said, finding your person, and then being incredibly disappointed, feeling foolish, feeling dumb, feeling like the rug was pulled out from under you. And from my perspective, for everyone listening, it's not your fault. Like Brandon's saying, it's not your fault. Just you've got to do what's right for you to live the life that you deserve to live. And it does take time to heal from the chaos. I'm still healing.
That's the thing, it does take time. And I think one of the things to remember as well is obviously it's not always the best thing to jump straight into another relationship. Some people do that. That's not the best thing, is to take time for yourself, focus on healing, and make sure things, basically set boundaries in most aspects, or all the aspects you can in your life, so that you're going to sort of bring yourself to not feel like in the fight or flight mode all the time. Because coming out of the relationship, you're going to act in ways you did during the relationship in all different aspects of your life. So I think taking the time to focus on yourself and sort of regulate your own emotions and feel more like yourself again is so important. It can take months, it can take years, but obviously it's the best thing you can do.
How can our listeners get in touch with you?
At the moment, the best way to get in touch is through Instagram, which is Brandon Minds. And I'd say that's the best way. So I have TikTok and YouTube and things, but it's all at Brandon Minds. So if they want to get in touch, they can message me. And for any Spanish people, it's at Brandon Mentes Claras. But I think obviously I assume most people are going to be English.
Thank you. One other question I wanted to ask you is, you did a beautiful post with your beautiful wife about how you know that a relationship feels safe. Can you list all the different ways that a safe relationship should feel?
I think the main way to feel safe is to be able to obviously validate each other's feelings. You can both have good days, bad days, but to be able to not clash. I think most things that I could say are going to feel it's hard to think about, because I think when you've found someone that you're in love with and you feel close to, you have a sense of calm around them, and you can be yourself. I think that's the main thing. I think validating each other's feelings, supporting them. My wife supports me with everything I do. She, most of the videos you see on Instagram, she's filming. She supports me with Clay Minds. She's been a driver with that. She did a bikini competition as well, by the way. A year after she had our daughter. as well. So we were young. We had our daughter Lily that has Down syndrome, which was a big shock to both of us. But she went straight in and did a bikini competition.
Good for her.
Yeah, so that was good. But I think feeling safe in a relationship would be to validate each other, and make an emotional safe place where you can both say what your problems are and not basically, just take the time to be calm around each other and work through whatever it is the other one's dealing with. And you've got to be supportive of each other. You've got to support each other's goals. And realistically, if you're in a relationship, those goals should probably align anyway.
Yes, they should. Well, Brandon, I'm so thrilled that you made the time and had the time to be on the podcast, because I just wanted to get you on here and share all your insights and educating everybody listening. I love your Instagram. That's where I found you. So go to Brandon's Instagram. It will be in the podcast description in here. And thank you so much. I'd love to have you come back another time and talk about other things. But for now, I really appreciate your time and your thoughtfulness and for being on the show and what you're doing to help other people.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
I want to thank Brandon for sharing his story, his expertise, and his heart with us today. His message is giving people the strength to trust themselves again, set boundaries, and finally step into relationships that feel safe and healthy. If today's conversation resonated with you, go follow Brandon on Instagram at Brandon Clear Minds. His content is straight truth, and it's changing lives every day. And remember, healing is not just possible, it's your right. Yes, you are worthy of love, peace, and authenticity. As always, thank you for tuning in to Fearlessly Authentic. Until next time, keep being bold, keep being brave, and keep being you.